1 week season.
Oh, baby, we are back for week 2 NFL main slate, searching for ceiling, presented by 1 week season and sharp football analysis very shortly. And as always, I will be joined by the great Rich Hribar. But let's talk about real quickly what this week 2 slate means. If week 1 was the slate of uncertainty, week 2 is the slate of false security, as in we think we know more than we know. Or I guess in week 1, we thought we knew more than we know. Week 2, we kind of know we know more than we know. So this inherent bias is something we'll need to fight through in week 2. But without further ado, we will bring him in, the great Rich Hribar. Rich, how was your week 1, man?
It was solid. It was, we came out with more money than we put in. So we'll take it. We'll move on to week 2. This feels like an in-season DFS week. Week 1 we have like the pricing, way out in advance. We kind of are waiting to see what teams do, but like with some of like the injuries we already had in week 1, and with some of the guys that were locked in with some primetime pricing last week, like this feels like an in-season week 2 DFS. Like, oh, we've got some angles to maneuver, not just what we believe was real or fake in week 1, but also some game theory elements here based on what it looks like is going to be some condensed ownership.
100%. We're going to have some massive ownership, and people pricing is tighter because we have CeeDee Lamb on the slate. We have Justin Jefferson. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's probably going to go a little bit overlooked. We'll talk about that. Obviously, Cooper Kupp. We've got Kyren Williams. So there's a lot of pay up that we want to kind of pay up for this week. With that, we got to start, I think, with the quote unquote game of the week here. We have a Tampa Bay team coming off of a solid offensive performance with Liam Cohen in his first game calling plays in Tampa, playing a Detroit Lions team that is perennially going to be able to, or I guess week to weekly, going to be able to put up some points. How are you seeing this game right off the rip?
Yeah, this game is pretty great for stacking purposes. This and Cardinals Rams, just because you have not just the pieces that we care about, the core pieces, but you also have the varying price points on players to make it so you can either onslaught this game or get creative. We have you can go down and play, Mike Evans, Amon-Ra St. Brown as expensive wide receivers. You can go to mid-range and play Chris Godwin and then Jameson Williams if the ankle stuff checks out today, because we're recording this at noon on a Friday and we haven't got full practice reports. And then you can even go down to some cheapies in this game. Jalen McMillan, the amount he was on the field and the upside that he presents on a per target basis is an option too. So this makes it fun. I also would say Cade Otton not completely removed from an option in this game either. He's a little grosser play, but he's on the board too as well, because the Buccaneers are going to have to throw the football in this game. There's just no way they're not. I mean, the Lions once again look like they're going to be a supreme pass funnel defense. They didn't even have DJ Reader play in the opener. And DJ Reader looks like he's going to on track to play in this game. He only gave up 3 yards per carry against Kyren Williams in week 1. The Rams had some offensive line issues, but this is more of what we saw a year ago. And even adding Carlton Davis and Taron Arnold, like they're just, the pass volume is going to be here. The Buccaneers they had a drop back rate of 74% in the 2 matchups that these teams played a year ago. So we're just going to get a ton of dropbacks on the Buccaneer side, which is why I even say, like, you might be able to get some stuff even out of K-Dot, and if you squeeze, if you had to do it. But like, I am in on the Bucs passing game kind of in totality here.
Yeah, and that's interesting you mentioned Carlton Davis, because he comes from the Buccaneers, now playing for the Lions. And we know the Lions are an aggressive defense. We know that they were 3rd in the league in week 1 in cover 1 usage rate. Do you see Carlton Davis with his buddy Mike Evans as a kind of primetime matchup this week?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that Aaron Glenn wants to be aggressive. He wants to dial up man coverage. He wants the zone blitz, right? So if we're going to get Mike Evans in one-on-one situations, we see over the course of his career, well, not only the course of his career, but with Baker Mayfield, I mean, he has just been a guy that his targets per route run against man coverage have gone through the roof. So if we're going to get man coverage, he had double-digit targets in both of these games a year ago. I feel pretty strongly about him double-digit targets. I feel like Mike Evans is kind of like the poster boy for this show since we started doing it. Like we somehow get the Mike Evans as an opener every week because he's priced in that nebulous price zone. And this week he's priced right like below Cooper Kupp, who's going to be immensely popular. So gamers are just going to play Cooper Kupp, and it's like, oh, another week where Mike Evans comes in under-owned.
Yeah, 100%. And the how the ownership is shaking out in this game. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to go overlooked, but it feels lower ownership than should be in this spot. Like if we played out the slate 100 times. And what's most interesting, I think, from that angle is Amon-Ra St. Brown plus Jalen McMillan is about the same salary as Chris Godwin plus Jameson Williams.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit to play around with there if we're building shells now here on Friday to give us a little bit of maneuverability come Sunday once this news shakes out. So keep that in mind. I do like Jalen McMillan here. I mean, he was in a route at 100% rate for the Buccaneers as a rookie in his first game. And his box score would look a lot different. one catch on 3 targets for that 32-yard touchdown, I believe, off the top of my head. It would look a lot different if he connected with that slight overthrow fingertip off the fingertips pass in the first quarter. Where
Drew a DPI too on our buddy Emmanuel Forbes. RIP DFS gamers. Emmanuel Forbes going on IR.
Surgery
already. You
Yeah.
know, he was the gift, the DFS gift that
Just
we love.
watch the memes flow in with like the Tampa Bay brass, Washington brass in that like decision. Like, should we have surgery? They're all like, yes. Yeah, give him surgery. Anyway.
And the Bucs have cluster
Okay.
injuries here. Cliff Kingsbury didn't know this in week 1, but the Buccaneers had 3 cornerbacks leave that game in the first half in week
Kingsbury
1.
didn't know this.
Yeah, he did it. We'll see if Zion McCollum clears concussion protocol, but that Bryce Hall was already placed on IR. Josh Hayes looks like he's going to be doubtful, and Antoine Winfield's already been ruled out.
Yep.
So,
and they have defensive line injuries. So it's like, this game is shaping up very nice. Me like 100%. I want a piece of this game. Are you going back to Baker after his solid performance in week 1?
I have no problem with it. I feel like right now when I'm laying out my quarterbacks, because I always say when I come on, I'm a very tight QB pool gamer. I usually get down to like 3 or 4, and I just don't know if he's gonna make it because I have a couple wild cards here this week that I really like in tournament settings. So, but I have no problem with anyone that it's including Baker into their pool this week. I think that he's gonna have a ton of pass value.
Yeah, he's on my short list actually.
Yeah.
And he projects.
And he might make it when we get there, but because if I'm bringing up guys like K. Dotton, I can't play K. Dotton without Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. You 100% must pair the two. Baker, he projects well. Pretty much anywhere you look, he's going to project as a top 3 point per dollar option at the quarterback position this week. And his ownership, I thought he was going to garner some ownership, but he's kind of hovering around 5%. So I think the field wants to get to the mobility. Because we saw pretty much all the mobile quarterbacks crush in week 1. You had Jalen Hurts, you had Jaden Daniels, you had Anthony Richardson, you had Lamar Jackson. They all were in the top 5. So adding an immobile Baker Mayfield just doesn't feel comfortable.
And people were going to be able to pay up for quarterback this week.
Yeah.
The way initial things are shaping up. It feels like Jordan if you want to play Anthony Richardson, you could. You're not going to like be restricted to be able to do so.
Yeah. 100%. I'm not, this is very valid. Baker had all the time in the world. And when he escaped, he did not see secondary pressure. That is highly unlikely to be the case against Aiden Hutchinson and the organic pass rush that this Lions defense has. But that kind of leads to, if I'm playing Baker, it's a nod to this game environment. I'm not like looking to play Baker with only Jalen McMillan and no Lions bring back. It's a nod to the game environment. I really like Baker plus Jalen McMillan plus Amon-Ra St. Brown as this high upside kind of nod to this game environment. This week when Baker's not drawing ownership, we're not really seeing a lot of ownership on Jalen McMillan. And then Amon-Ra is probably drawing lower than should be, quote unquote, ownership.
And Goff too in this game has had 20 fantasy points or more in every career game he's faced Todd Bowles. And he's also probably, and we just talk about the injuries the Bucs
and he's
have.
At home in a dome.
And we just talked about all the defensive injuries the Bucs have, because both of those guys, because like you said, they are not runners. They don't draw the same ownership, projected ownership as they maybe should. In the spot.
And with Tampa, let me get the exact numbers here. With Tampa's defense, they played 78.8% zone in week one with a 63.6% too high alignment rate. So that to me just screams Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has been the guy against zone for this team. He has been the guy against too high. You look at the splits between him and Sam Laporta last season, it was like Sam Laporta was the dude against man and single high, and Amon-Ra was the dude against zone and too high. How does JMO fit in that puzzle? I would expect Jameson Williams to have more success in a downfield role against teams with a poor pass rush and against man coverage. That's just my read on this situation. Loving Amon-Ra this week. And I want to get pieces. And I think a fun way to do that is to not pair him with Goff, do so with Baker and Jalen McMillan or Godwin or however you want to play that out. But really like McMillan here in this spot. All right. You mentioned earlier that you had some off the board quarterbacks. So I actually want to go there next. Talk to me a little bit about these quarterbacks and their situations this week.
Well, I want to talk about one guy that's just like a one-off, and then I have a spot that I think that, we definitely should be playing, but my first guy is Justin Fields.
Okay.
And,
he was the one mobile quarterback that didn't crush last week.
Yeah, but we did have the 14 rushing attempts.
Yeah.
And I just think if we're going to see a situation where the Broncos played defensively in the same fashion that they did in week one, that's going to be really advantageous at his price point. I mean, they played man coverage on passing plays, the second highest rate in the league. They blitzed at the highest league rate of passing plays. And since he entered the league, nobody has it's the same reason we laid out for Jaden Daniels last week, really. Since he entered the league, no player has a higher scramble rate against the blitz than Justin Fields. Against man coverage, he also has the highest scramble rate in the NFL. So it's a very similar layout to what I believe were Jaden Daniels. My thing with Jaden Daniels was we both kind of maybe did this. Is like we felt the need to maybe add Terry McLaurin. I don't think you need to add anything with Justin Fields. I think you can just play him by himself, a la carte, which is probably what we should have done with Jaden Daniels last week. Because again, Cliff Kingsbury didn't realize all the Buccaneers cornerbacks got hurt. But Justin Fields is like the one guy I think from that game that I'm including in my pool this week because I just don't think he's going to be played.
Do you expect
low total, gross game?
Yeah. Do you expect a Pat Surtain shadow this week?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, it's the same thing. That's why I don't think I need to force Pickens. And Pickens did get over on AJ Terrell, another very good cornerback. But, we saw Pat Surtain against a physical wide receiver last week in DK Metcalf kind of take him out of the game, which is a very, very poor sign for everyone that was hoping for that year 2 Jackson Smith and Jigba breakout.
Dude, we even talked about it, man.
Yeah, very bad sign to see a game where Pat Surtain took DK Metcalf out of the game and Ryan Grubb did not create anything for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not good out of the box.
Yeah, not good. Sorry,
the real spot I want to talk about is the 49ers passing game.
Let's, please.
And obviously not just because we could have this Jordan Mason Uber ownership and we want to get leverage that way, but I think it's a really great spot for the 49ers passing game. In true Brian Flores fashion, he blitzed a ton in week one, 42.6% of pass plays. When these teams played a year ago in Minnesota, he blitzed Brock Purdy on 50% of his dropbacks. It was the second highest rate of blitzes Purdy faced in a game last year. The only person that blitzed Brock Purdy more last year was Wink Martindale, who,
RIP.
Yeah. Not in the league anymore. Not real RIP. He's alive.
Yeah.
Fake not RIP. In the league anymore. We don't get to pick on the Giants blitz rates. But in that game against the blitz, Purdy was 13 of 15 for 12 yards per pass attempt. Remember, in that game, Trent Williams did not play. Deebo Samuel did not play.
Justin Jefferson did not play.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson did not play. But Brock Purdy had some bad turnovers in that game. He had a fumble, 2 interceptions. He also was potentially concussed on a QB sneak in that game and then continued to play. If you remember, because the next week he cleared concussion protocol, but then was in it.
Yeah, that's right.
But if Brian Flores wants to blitz heavy against Brock Purdy, I think with Trent Williams, with Deebo back, I mean, it's going to be a spot where he can get dissected, and we just don't have that turnover variance. It could be a huge game for, I think, Brock Purdy. I actually think, too, in larger field stuff, you can play Purdy and Mason. We did this on this show. I brought it up several times last year. You can play Brock Purdy with just the running back and monopolize every 49er touchdown.
Yeah.
Like that is an option.
Unless a Debo rush.
Unless a Debo rush, which we did get in week 1. But I
Yeah.
do think Debo's a really good play again, because not only do you get the rushing stuff with, CMC potentially not playing or being limited, you get more rushing acumen. But Debo has always been the guy against, the zone coverage and the too high stuff. And although Brian Flores blitzes a lot, they play a lot of zone and too high behind it.
Oh yeah.
And so
I was
that's
just going
why
to
I
bring
think,
that up.
yeah, and that's why I think Debo is still in play as a really good stacking part. And then you have the inherent run back of Justin Jefferson with no Jordan Addison, no TJ Hawkinson, and they're going to have way more than 26 dropbacks than they had in week 1.
They controlled that game environment throughout. So yeah, you mentioned the high zone rates. Minnesota Vikings led the league in week 1 in two high looks at 83.7%. They played zone 81.6% of the time, and we know that they're sending unique blitzes out of that. So what does that lead to? That typically he's blitzing from nickel and dime. So he's typically blitzing from 5 or 6 defensive backs on the field. He's sending 1 or 2 sometimes, and that leaves the middle of the field for Deebo Samuel. So I really, really like that shout. I think a very, very interesting way to play. Well, there are multiple ways to play this game, but pairing like Jordan Mason with Deebo Samuel, you're getting access to what, 40 potential opportunities between Deebo's carries, Jordan Mason's carries, and then all the targets we expect for those two. And then taking that one step further, in that game last season that they played, we talked about how Deebo Samuel was out. George Kittle kind of had to do kind of everything. He led the team in receiving with like 78 yards, if I remember correctly. But he was kept in to block against the aggression of Brian Flores at an increased rate as well. So with Deebo back in the lineup, I expect Kittle to kind of be this guy as like this 6th offensive lineman against these unique blitzes of Brian Flores, which should get Deebo Samuel out in the flat at a pretty significant rate. So I love pairing Jordan Mason with Deebo Samuel, kind of getting access to 35, 40, 45, maybe if things shake out correct, like in our favor, opportunities between those two. And again, this is if CMC is out. Conflicting reports still here on Friday afternoon.
And knowing what we'll probably have to go into Sunday morning. At least it's an early game.
Yeah.
So we'll know at 11:30 Eastern that whether or not CMC plays or not.
100%. You can bring that back with Justin Jefferson if you're attacking this game environment. I think you can play them without a bring back because we expect the 49ers to score points. They're 16 out of the last 25, or out of the total 25 games, regular season games that Brock Purdy has started, this team has broken 30 points. So that's a fairly significant hit rate of scoring pointages. In my opinion, I want to have exposure to this 49ers team. And in my opinion, the only way that Jordan Mason and or Deebo Samuel are failing here is if the 49ers defense is succeeding. And why is that? Minnesota against the New York Football Giants allowed the 3rd highest pressure rate in week 1. So that is not bueno against the San Francisco defense that is capable of generating pressure organically without having to send those unique blitzes. So this could be a spot where like we look back on Monday morning and we're like, how did Jordan Mason fail? How did Deebo Samuel fail? Oh, okay. Well, their defense scored once or twice and had like 4 takeaways. That could be on the table here. So I'm keeping that in the back of my mind, even though I really, really do like Jordan Mason and Deebo Samuel. Any last thoughts on this spot?
No, I like it. I mean, I still think if in larger field stuff, Aaron Jones is on the table here, just because we didn't see him the necessity to get him involved as a pass catcher because they didn't have to throw. And I do think he is going to be involved as a pass catcher, especially now that we remove Jordan Addison, another piece out of the passing game.
100%.
He's just good. Going back to last year, he's just good. Aaron Jones, good at football. Like he's arguably on like the best, like going back to last year, like the last 6-week stretch any running back has played in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, he was PFF's highest graded rusher in week 1. So this is not washed, hashtag not washed, good at football. Speaking of hashtag not washed, we got to talk about this Rams game, man. So tell me about what you're seeing, and hashtag not washed is a shout out to my best ball brethren, because my ownership on Cooper Kupp in best ball was rather high. But what are you seeing from this spot? the Rams and Cardinals here.
Then this is another game that just from an onslaught perspective stands out because the way the pricing is layered in on all these pieces. You got guys at every level, and that's when you can really stack games up. Because obviously Cooper Kupp played on Sunday night, so he would have been 9K. If this game was if they would have played that game in the afternoon last week, he would have been 9K this week easily, coming off 21 targets. Easily would have been. So he's priced up, kind of in that, 7K, mid 7Ks on both sites. So you can play him as kind of like the expensive piece. You also have Kyren Williams, who wasn't tackled by the Cardinals last year. There's cluster offensive line injuries for the Rams, that we will have to deal with. But if you're going to be missing offensive linemen, the Cardinals defense is a team to be facing. They're just not aggressive. They're very passive. They were very passive again to open the year up against Josh Allen. So I do think Kyren Williams is still in play. Then you've got kind of the mid-range, now that the Cardinals have swung in their favorites, James Conner stands out. We talked about playing James Conner as a bring back with the Bills guys last week. Mm-hmm. He's right on board again. Ironically, if you play on both sites, James Conner is the same price on FanDuel that he's on DraftKings.
That doesn't happen. Yeah.
Seems like a very, very mistake.
Very mistake.
Very, very much a mistake. Very much a mistake. So you can play him. You've got Trey McBride, whose usage was completely good. If you want to pay up for Trey McBride, he was completely fine. He was second in amongst all tight ends in target rate in week 1. So you can go back to him, I believe. You can play the flop lag there. And then you've got all these cheap pieces that we want to be able to maybe play the fallout of Puka Nacua, but you also have Greg Dortch on the other side too, if you want to incorporate him. But, you've got Tyler Johnson, you've got DeMarcus Robinson, you've got Colby Parkinson, that all are cheapies. So there's just a conglomerate of guys to play in this game at varying price points.
And this Arizona Cardinals defense is one that, through Jonathan Gannon coaching, outperforms their talent that they have on defense. We saw it last year actually with the same Rams team, did something similar, outcoached and outperformed the talent that they had on the defensive side of the ball. Now with Aaron Donald, that's a very, very different equation. So this Cardinals defense is a team that led the league in cover 4 utilization last year. They started the season off with a 20% cover 4 utilization rate. They played 46.7% too high, which I expect that to increase here with cover 4 or quarters seeing a slight tick. But what stood out to me in my research is this Cardinals team gave up the most fantasy points per drop back against or when utilizing too high looks last in week 1. Yes, that was against Josh Allen. Yes, he was the mobile threat and scored 2 touchdowns on the ground, but this coverage unit in Arizona is not good. So we looked at kind of what the Rams did last week against the Lions. Again, the Lions have Aiden Hutchinson. They are able to generate pressure. The Rams had 3 offensive linemen go down in the game. All 3 are expected to be out in week 2. So how did Sean McVay move the football at all in that spot? That's where the 21 targets to Cooper Kupp came. And they were all within 5 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. He was getting outs. He was getting slants. He was getting the ball in his hands as an extension of the run, as pretty much any way they could get him the ball. That's what Sean McVay was doing. So they were taking 3 to 7 yards on first down through Cooper Kupp as this way to remain in the game. And that is what kept them in the game. That is what had them in control of the game until the final possession. And then they lose the coin flip in overtime and they lose. So Sean McVay is able to coach around this stuff. He proved it in week 1. He's very, very good. A top 2, 3, maybe play caller in the NFL. So the offensive line issues against now this Cardinals team that plays this sit back, cover 4 quarters, we're going to keep the play in front of us. They are not capable of generating much pressure organically without sending blitzes, and they don't want to blitz. I expect Cooper Kupp, he's not going to see 21 targets, but 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. And his ADOT is probably going to see a significant bump here because of the opponent. So really, really like Cooper Kupp. He's going to have ownership. Really, really like Kyren Williams. He's going to have ownership. But I really like pairing the two this week. Yeah. If you similar discussion to the Jordan Mason and Deebo Samuel, the spot just sets up so well to get 40, 45, 50 maybe combined touches or opportunities between those two. So while that's probably not going to go entirely overlooked, it's going to have lower ownership than I think in this spot with against a Cardinals team that really is not going to be able to generate pressure. So,
and Kyron, if we get the fallout where Mason and we're recording this again Friday afternoon, we get Charbonnet as those two guys, like it just inherently soaks up two spots where gamers won't get to Kyron Williams based on a numbers game because you're only going to play and on DraftKings you're only going to play two running backs probably, and on FanDuel you can flex the running back for sure, but a lot of gamers are just going to take at least one of those two guys, or if not both, and pay up at wide receiver, and that's just going to inherently lower Kyron Williams ownership.
One of the other spots where I think ownership is going to settle this week is with the Chargers backfield. How are you handling that situation against a Carolina team that did not look any better than they did last season?
Yeah, it's just an awful spot for the Panthers defense to be facing a team that we know inherently wants to come in and just wear them out, right? I mean, we knew coming into this season, the Panthers, the losses they had in their front seven were going to be a big deal, and then they lose Derek Brown. And then you lose Derek Brown in week one. Like your best interior lineman.
Yeah.
And they already allowed the most points, rushing points per game to backfields in 2023 with Derek Brown and with Brian Burns. And then they come out in week one and they give up the most rushing points to the Saints backfield. A Saints backfield that had no explosives last year. And obviously, Clint Kubiak, we talked about Clint Kubiak last week and what he was going to bring to the table. But now you're going to be facing a Chargers team that just wants to line up and run the football. I have no problem with going back to a guy like Dobbins because the spot is so good as favorites. I do have a little bit of concerns on one, how he got there last week and how sustainable it was. And that I do still believe there will be a tighter split than just people believe based on the box score of yardage. Like I do believe the Chargers are in this they're just not going to turn Dobbins into a 20 touch player in week 2. So we are going to see a split, probably more than people want. Do we get a Gus Edwards goal line carry, right? Like that still is in the realm of possibility. So I'm waiting to kind of see where the projected ownership lies on Dobbins. I think if he's going to be like immensely popular, I'll probably just live with it. Cause I don't believe he's going to have the raw touch count to where I'm scared. And he's not going to have the reception upside to where I believe he's going to outright bury me.
Yeah. And I mean, this was a almost 50-50 even split in the backfield, 13 opportunities to 12. Correct me if I'm wrong, the J.K. Dobbins touchdown came from like 10 or 12 yards out. Like it wasn't in the green zone. So this is a situation where, and we saw it kind of, it shook out kind of like we thought it would. They utilized Gus Edwards between the tackles, wear down the opponent in the Raiders. And that Raiders team is not a slob of a defensive line. So for them to come in with the changes along the offensive line that they had and kind of just manhandle and wear the Raiders down throughout the game was pretty telling in the success moving forward that we expect from this team. So I'd expect kind of the same thing, like Gus Edwards to kind of lead the way as far as touches go in the first quarter. And then they bring in Dobbins after they've kind of worn down the defensive line. And do we see 2 mega explosive runs out of J.K. Dobbins in this spot? I mean, yeah, it could happen. Is it likeliest to happen? Probably not in this spot. And while J.K. Dobbins had those 2 long gains, he was chased down on both of them. While he was the second fastest ball carrier at running back in week 1, he got chased down on both of them. And he was I think 2 miles per hour slower than he showed 2 seasons ago, the first time he was coming off injury. So yeah, this spot is, can J.K. Dobbins return value at ownership? Maybe. But he's going to have to do it probably on the 13 to 15 opportunities here.
Right.
Anything else to add from this spot?
No, not that game at all. I'm going to avoid that game.
Yeah. Same. Late game or late slate hammers. You mentioned Justin Fields and Pitt. We talked about the Rams and the Cardinals. The only other late game this week is the Cincinnati Bengals and Kansas City Chiefs. We've got some off the field kind of jabbering going on.
With Hollywood Brown placed on IR.
Hollywood Brown placed on IR. They said they went through additional imaging studies and then decided to make the decision to place him on IR and get him surgery on that AC joint. So Yeah, how are you seeing this? Is this a Xavier Worthy fast go Burr play, or how are you handling this late game?
Yeah, it's funny that we've got, Bengals Chiefs, and it feels like there's just very lukewarm excitement, right? Like this
Yeah,
would have been
right.
a Bengals Chiefs 4 p.m. game, afternoon game would have been like the talk of everything, right? In the past.
Yeah,
And it's interesting because we got everything we wanted out of the Chiefs reveal, right? Like we were, even though we didn't have Hollywood Brown, we saw just what adding the element of speed that Xavier Worthy had to this offense. And it wasn't just what Xavier Worthy did on his plays, the end around, touchdown, and then the blown coverage on the vertical ball. It was what
yeah.
his speed created for the middle of the field for a
Hmm.
guy like Rashee Rice. And I remember one of the takes I kept bouncing off back and forth all offseason was like, just does adding Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy just make Rashee Rice that much better? And like
Yeah,
it did for a week or at least 1 week. And what you like to see out of the box was it was the first time since they've gotten rid of Tyreek Hill where you watch the Chiefs offense operate and you were like, it just doesn't, they don't need Travis Kelce to be Travis Kelce.
yeah,
And it felt good because even Rashee Rice at the end of last year, so much was kind of manufactured and they took him away in the playoffs, right? But in week one, the stuff that they were creating for him was a little bit different. I know he still did operate primarily off yak, but it wasn't just the stuff completely at the line of scrimmage. Like there were stuff that they were creating for him, like on the slant. Like, is he just like now Michael Thomas on
slant boy.
steroids? Like,
Yeah,
but Michael Thomas didn't have like the after the catch stuff that Rashee Rice has shown us through 2 years,
yeah,
and completely undervalued. He's way underpriced, like
hundred
Rashee Rice.
percent.
I think he'll be popular. We'll get to Rashee Rice, but he's another guy that stands out. But then we talked about some of the running back values that could just create some overlooked opportunities, and Isaiah Pacheco in this spot definitely stands out. We saw the Bengals in week one have the same issues against the run that they had in 2023 without DJ Reader.
Hmm.
They just couldn't get off the field against the New England Patriots.
Yeah,
The New England Patriots were just like running 7-minute drives just at will on the Bengals. Like they knew
with
Ramondre was getting the football. They couldn't even do anything about it.
hmm
When these teams played, last time we saw these teams play, Isaiah Pacheco had 170 total yards, and we had all the usage from him. He gave away third downs to Samaj Pirine in week one.
yeah,
It's why third downs are kind of an overrated stat when you look at running backs, like a guy coming off the field on third downs. Because Isaiah Pacheco had a 70% route participation still in that game. And Samaj Pirine outsnapped him on third down. So yeah, Pacheco stands out, especially if we kind of get like just the orbital pull of, hey, Charbonnet and Mason are cheap. We have to play him. So
yeah,
he's definitely a guy on my radar. Mahomes is interesting enough projecting for solid ownership. I'm curious how much that is going to be true when we get to Sunday.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely scared of the Chiefs being a Death Star again. Like it feels like they're going to be really good again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they have a top five defense now. We expect the offense to be that much more efficient. I love the Pacheco shout because he's $100 more than Kyron Williams, so same pricing tier there. That's a really really good shout. And I think if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, which he should be on our short list this week, if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, I think the doubles that also include Pacheco are really really sharp. So Patrick Mahomes plus Pacheco plus one of Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, or Travis Kelce. On Travis Kelce, I think the rumors of his demise are entirely
Oh yeah.
overblown. He like ceded some usage to Noah Gray, but he was still in a route at an 89.3% clip, which was seventh in the league amongst tight ends. He saw 19 slot snaps for a 39.6% rate. So they are still getting him in the slot, which is what we want to see at tight end. He played 90.6% snap rate, fourth in the league. So like this might be a sneaky like Patrick Mahomes, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Kelce type game where you're looking to just capture all of that stuff over the middle of the field. Rashee Rice is going to stay involved, but you're just hoping he doesn't score in a stack like that.
Yeah.
As far as the Bengals, are you looking anywhere to bring it back? Are you just going full on Chiefs onslaught with this spot? Are you picking and choosing? Are you interested in the Bengals at all here?
I mean, the only player I think you can even be interested in is Jamar Chase right now. That's the big kind of bugaboo that we have, or question mark we have right now with the
Yeah.
Bengals, is they have one good offensive player. And like, can they be effective? We've seen this now. We've seen a mounting sample now of Joe Burrow when one of these wide receivers doesn't play, not really playing up to the level that we would believe he could play from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah.
And he had opportunities to let some stuff rip in week one and didn't. I mean, he was 22nd in the NFL in ADOT in week one. Only 20% of his throws went 10 yards or further downfield. That's 28th in the league. That's an ongoing problem. Last year, he was last in the NFL
Mm-hmm.
in that department. And this Bengals offense just doesn't have enough talent to paper cut you. They just don't. Like you can't count on Mike Gesicki, Eric All, and Drew Sample and Yandre Yoshavash and Trenton Irwin to just like a team. They're just not going to matriculate drives. You're not going to sustain drives going through those players. You need to generate big plays in some capacity, and they have one player that we believe can do it. So
maybe two in Chase Brown, but his usage is
correct. Yeah, but I think you and I have been questioning that the entire offseason, just exactly how much was Chase Brown even going to play.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a team that just doesn't trust him as a pass protector. He did not have a pass protection snap in week one. He had 8 all of last season. They just don't trust him. So you might get a big play for him, but we're not going to chase that. I mean, the only way like you can say is like the Bengals, like, do they come out and just try to, hashtag establish it and run it? Because the Chiefs did in the opening of that game when the Ravens were in their base offense, they were having success, running with Lamar and Derrick Henry. And then they got game scripted out of that and they had to drop back. And then we saw the issues they had with their offensive line. They couldn't really push anything downfield. Everything was quick hitting. Is that just what the Bengals have to do? Is that what we're going to see? That is the Bengals going to be reverted? If the Chiefs come out and score 14 points in the first quarter of this game, Zach Moss is out of the game now. And who are you trusting to get plays?
And I got a lot to say also. Close your ears and your eyes potentially if you're a Bengals fan. Zach Taylor is not it. I was hoping coming into this season that we saw do something. It's like poking with the stick, like do something. And this is really, really hard to say about like a former or a coach that comes from the extended Gary Kubiak coaching tree. The Sean McVay coaching tree is like,
well, Shane Waldron's getting into that category. He's approaching that territory too.
He is allergic to 11 personnel, but which might not be an issue this week because Keenan Allen might not play. And anyway, they're not on this main slate. They are for FanDuel. So if you're playing FanDuel, pay attention to Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze because DJ Moore might be the guy for the Bears this week. But Zach Taylor, pre-snap motion rate is down. Play action rate is down. He's not moving Chase around enough in the formation to get him the ability to win. He's just reliant on the talent on his offense. And like you said, the talent on his offense right now is Jamar Chase, and that's just not going to work. So yeah, dude, Zach Taylor's got to go. It's painful to say that out loud or hear myself say that out loud, but Zach Taylor's got to go because this offense they're not doing anything to kind of push the envelope. They are very, very static. The layering of the routes is atrocious. Everything I'm seeing on tape is just this has got to change. So I got the Uber downs on Cincinnati moving forward.
Bad vibes. I'm at least willing to give them a pass to the middle of this. I'm down on Zach Taylor too, but there might be a chance where we can catch this coming back when Higgins comes back. But if Higgins is out, and we're expecting to be out, I already saw he did not practice today on Friday, which means he ain't playing.
He's out.
So if it's just Jamar Chase against Spags is going to be able to throw enough at Jamar Chase, to slow down Jamar Chase.
Oh yeah, to that end, Spags, he's an extremely high coverage utilization rate. We saw it again in week 1, 78.4% too high utilization. So when you get a very vanilla offense against a fast, aggressive defense that is trying to keep the play in front of them, like Spags utilizes with the blitzes and with the unique pressures, it's probably going to get ugly pretty quick here. One comment here is Travis Kelce looked slow. Yes, Travis Kelce is not the guy at the top of routes who is going to win against a defender. That's why we're seeing this increase like offensive pass interference stuff from Travis Kelce. But he is wicked smart. This dude knows football. You see, I mean, we look at all of the offseason shows by HBO that we had where we're getting an inside look at Travis Kelce. Look at like the clips of the postseason Travis Kelce, and he's like shouting to Patrick Mahomes like what to do in the next play, what he saw in the coverage. So this guy is so smart, football smart. I liken it to like tail end of career Larry Fitzgerald, where it was like he didn't have the burst anymore. He didn't necessarily even have the body control that he had earlier on in his career, but they move him into the slot and he is so smart that he knows how to diagnose a defense and get open. That's kind of what we're seeing with Travis Kelce. But if he's playing 91% of the snaps, if he is in a route at an 86% clip, like he's going to be okay. He's just going to have to get there on volume, and he's not going to have these explosives, but he's a red zone threat. He's still a mismatch creator. And he's so smart that he's able to read and diagnose a defense and get open. So that is,
we just believe from, and it was only 1 week, but the Chiefs have more answers than they had a year ago, and that generates more points. And you know, if an offense is going to score 30 points, we care about the opportunities that a player might get 2 touchdowns, right? And if there's a player that could potentially have 2 touchdowns, like he is definitely on the board. So
100%.
yeah, I like the idea of bringing him in tournaments just because I think we're going to see Pacheco and Rice have more ownership than him anyways. So the Mahomes is the interesting one because I mean, I'm seeing him projected for really high ownership, and I just don't know if a lot of gamers are going to play him, but maybe. I feel like maybe my just internal vibes are off on that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think there's we're probably going to see it paired with
because people are going to play Richardson for sure.
Yeah,
and they're going to have the money to do so because
Jaden Daniels is going to be up there.
Yeah, and then you got the Lions game, but they're like that. We talked about that being low, but
yeah, I think like all the mobile quarterbacks are going to garner ownership. So like Jaden Daniels, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson, you mentioned, they're all going to garner some ownership. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. And if you think about like where Patrick Mahomes is priced, it's almost certainly like has to be paired with like Jordan Mason. It has to be paired with these cheaper guys. It is probably going to be paired with a guy like flop lag Andre Yoshavash, which if he were not garnering ownership, I'd probably be a little bit more interested because of the high rates that this Chiefs defense is playing. They're going to look to like get a bracket on Jamar Chase and say like force like, hey, Zach Taylor, I dare you to beat me with somebody else type situation. So, but he's like projecting for 12 to 15% ownership. And I'm just kind of not interested in that at ownership, just like we weren't last week.
Yeah, last week we had it at the end of the show, and I was like, I'll be happy to fade a guy if he's going to be that highly owned.
100%. You mentioned you had multiple quarterback.
Well, that was I had Fields, and then the 49ers passing game were like my 2.
Okay, gotcha. What other spots you want to dissect? Should we talk about Indy and Green Bay potentially with the quarterback situation that's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, how are you feeling about this situation of Malik Willis, starting? First of all, what percentages would you give on Malik Willis not making it through this game?
Dude, do they bring in Clifton? Like they just don't have any other options. It's like they back themselves as a Packers fan, right hand in the air. Like we backed ourselves into this corner. Like it's inexcusable for an NFL franchise with Super Bowl aspirations. We have the roster.
The Dolphins, we seen this last night.
The same thing. It's inexcusable to not address the backup quarterback position in earnest. And I say in earnest because like Malik Willis is a project. He is a guy you bring in to get him active on the game day as this project. When a guy like Ryan Tannehill is not been touched in this offseason, when Joe Flacco signed for pennies, when James Winston even like signed for pennies, like get somebody who's able to at least give you a chance, like if your quarterback goes down. So yeah, like man, I really wish that we had, and we can say the same thing for the Raiders. We can say the same thing for the Dolphins. It's like we should be paying attention a little bit more. And I think last year was the highest quarterback injury rate that we've had in the last decade. So like, why are we not paying attention to the backup quarterback position in earnest? Anyway, yeah.
But I mean,
As far
because the
as
big thing is just the negative plays, right? Like
yeah,
Willis is kind of like actually like
he's
the
got some upside, but
yeah. I mean, it's the negative plays. I mean, he's been sacked on 18%,
it's disgusting.
18% of his NFL dropbacks.
That's
Like,
like
and that was a problem at Liberty too. Like,
yeah,
Liberty of all places. And he's also thrown an interception on 4.5% of his attempts, which is 70 out of 78 quarterbacks throw 50 or more passes since the end of the NFL. It's the negative plays because you can live with a guy being inaccurate, right? Or even try to coach them around this, especially the talent the Packers have. Like
yeah.
the talent the Packers have is immensely more than when we saw him start with the Tennessee Titans. It's a greater level. But you can't have negative plays. You just can't. Like that can't be successful in the NFL. So that's the worry, right? And so is this a game where we finally see like Anthony Richardson just not have to be the Anthony Richardson that we've seen in the small sample?
Good
Is it
Lord.
a situation where is this a Jonathan Taylor spot? Is basically what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Is this a spot where the Colts are able to just get Jonathan Taylor cooking and we get that long touchdown run? He gets a couple touchdowns. Packers didn't play well against the run in week 1, but how much of that was the field conditions? Like there are questions there. But the guy that stands out to me most, I think, if you're playing this spot, would be Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. Like going back to Anthony Richardson, it's like that throw, the throw that might be called the throw for a while. In pressure with a guy and an offensive lineman right in his face, takes a step backwards and heaves it off his back foot 60 yards to Alec Pierce. Come on, dude. He might be one of 3 maybe guys in the world that can make that throw. I don't know, man. That was insane. And we also got like CJ Stroud, not to be overshadowed. CJ Stroud on a 4th down, completing a pass for a 1st down from his knees. That was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is Patrick Mahomes. This is great. Anyway, back to this game. Like when I'm thinking through, like putting myself in LaFleur's position or putting myself in the coach's position, how am I going to attack this game? Both teams are coming off an opening weekend loss. We need a win. In my opinion, both teams are looking to slow this game down as much as possible. They're going to ride Jonathan Taylor as much as possible. The Packers probably running Josh Jacobs as much as possible, and then mixing Marshawn Lloyd in if he's active, mixing Emmanuel Wilson in if he's if Lloyd is not active. And Wilson looked pretty spry in week 1 on his like 3-4 carries, whatever it was. That's kind of, and if I'm LaFleur, I'm looking, get that freaking ball out of Malik Willis's hands as fast as possible. So that probably increases Jaden Reed's involvement on schemed usage. That probably involves a higher target share for Tucker Kraft. And while both of those guys are not like outstanding plays on paper, Jaden Reed has, we saw it in week 1. He's got the talent and the upside per touch upside and if he's getting additional schemed usage, there could be something there. But the paths to this game environment itself kind of erupting are extremely minimal. So potential for a Jaden Reed one-off, potential for either of the running backs to be in your pool this week, but not like a priority spot for me.
Not the salary? Yeah.
Yeah, and along those lines, this Colts defense, who is a defensive unit that is going to be near the league lead in cover 3, kind of sit back, allow the play to develop, going to be high and single high. Are they on your radar at all this week?
Gus Bradley's going to do what he does.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how he approaches kind of defending these things. He actually came out this week and talked about he may be overcompensated for the Houston Texans wide receivers. So in that game, we actually saw Bobby Slowick and the Texans transition. They went, their team
beautiful.
They played a lot of 21 last year in context of the league, and they basically swapped out their 21 personnel for 12 personnel and played 2 tight end sets. But so Joe Mixon had 17 runs out of 12 personnel last week. But here's the catch. Gus Bradley left 5 or more defensive backs in on 12 of those runs.
Refuses to leave cover 3.
So he overcompensated by still staying out in nickel against 12 personnel. And that's why Mixon had the success he had. So they're running out of heavy personnel against light boxes, like just complete numbers advantage. And Mixon looked actually really good too. He looked he looked
big
like
Mixon
probably
fan.
One of the better versions of Mixon that we've seen. He was creating a lot after contact, which you like that too. So does Gus Bradley do the same? Does he? Because the Packers can run out of 11. They've got the personnel for it. It's just going to be interesting to see what Gus Bradley does. Does he learn from his week 1 mistake? And, does he get, if the Packers come out in 11, does he handle that more as maybe saying, all right, I'm going to play more base defense instead of maybe playing sub package? Because the Packers can also come out in 11 and do what the 49ers do. And then now Jaden Reed's in the backfield. And you're like, oh, damn it. Like we subbed out. Because that was always kind of the thing. The whole Debo role and someone trying to change. This is why like Jaden Reed does kind of fit what Debo does. Because a lot of teams have tried to do this with subpar players, like I think like Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel, because Debo wins. He can win as a receiver. And so when you show 11 personnel, you have to treat it at face value. You have to, because he can win as a receiver. But when when a team like the Giants comes out 11 personnel, they're not scared of Wan'Dale Robinson winning as a wide receiver. They just aren't. But Jaden Reed does represent that value. He can get downfield. So you have to kind of respect saying, like, I'm going to come out. We have to respect Jaden Reed winning as a wide receiver first. And then you're like, oh, we went sub packages in the backfield. You're like, oh, damn it. That's what's fun about Jaden Reed versus some of these other guys that have been this is Debo Samuel all over again. Like the Debo comp.
Yeah, I think Jaden Reed is very interesting for MME this week for all the reasons that we talked about. I think leading us out here, we'll do a quick discussion on the state of the tight end position, and then I want to get your moonshot of the week that we like to end the shows with here.
Justin Fields wasn't good enough.
No, well, that was a good one.
Yeah, no.
We'll go skill position.
I got another one though.
All right, we'll go skill position. The state of the tight end position this week on the slate, 2 major injuries at tight end in David Njoku and Jake Ferguson. And then we have the Puka Nacua stuff, which Colby Parkinson was on the field almost every snap, in a route almost every pass play. And all 3 of those guys, so Colby Parkinson, Luke Schoonmaker, and
Brevin Spann-Ford.
Yes. And Brevin Jordan, Jordan Akins. Jordan Akins, back to Houston days, are all priced between 3,100 and 2,900. In cash, I think this is kind of your player pool. In MMEs, how are you kind of handling these guys and this position this week?
Yeah, kind of not that excited. I think Parkinson fits the mold of like he's gonna be on the field in a game environment we like, so I have no problem with that. I do worry about the state of the Rams offensive line impacting Colby Parkinson's either route participation or just the run out for him. I think that's an avenue to where it could limit him. We'll see, how Sean McVay kind of works around that. I mentioned K-Dot, and I think he belongs to that boat too.
So gross,
in your big stick. I get it. But I mean, again, the Lions have this, like they continuously give production up to tight ends. We saw Parkinson even have a smattering of usage. So if we can get in the box with K-Dot, and that's fine. But I overall still think when I look at the state of the NFL and 60% too high rate in week 1, tight ends are going to get theirs. And we've seen tight ends as a position the past 4 years, their league-wide rate of targets have gone up every year. And I still think that when you look at the participation from these guys, the box score wasn't there for guys like Kelsey or Trey McBride, but there was nothing wrong with their overall usage. And I think we are going to run into weeks where like these guys do score. So I don't think it's like we have to run and hide from, elite tight end is dead. I think we're going to have plenty of weeks where these guys do deliver. I think some of the pricing is kind of weird because Brock Bowers is underpriced on both sites. And Brock Bowers out of the box had designed usage. Like they were running stuff through him. He was lining up out wide in the slot, out of the backfield for 2 snaps. And he's a little bit underpriced in a game environment where we're anticipating the Raiders to have to throw a lot of passes. It's a good defense, so like you have that working against you, but he's really cheap. I mean, 4,400 for a guy that already led the team in targets in week 1 and had designed usage is probably just too cheap. So if I'm gonna
Yeah.
pay down, it's hard for me to like go past Brock Bowers.
Yeah. And if you are, I mean, look at the ownership. Brock Bowers is like sub 3% right now, depending on where you look. That kind of volume and schemed usage at tight end for that lower ownership honestly should not happen. You look at like tight end ownership, it's like, yeah, Travis Kelce is going to be owned. And then it's into 2 of the 3 names that I named at the bottom here in Colby Parkinson and Jordan Akins. And we have Luke Schoonmaker at like sub 1%. Oh no. Okay.
Did we lose you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Your
Oh,
picture's
okay.
good. So we just it's
Sweet.
StreamYard. You know, it's funny. I was just on a StreamYard before yours, and my picture went out on StreamYard.
Yeah, my
And but
just
my audio was still good, so we kept
oh,
talking.
very
So
nice.
maybe we'll get you back, but you we can still hear you, or at least I
Okay.
can. Hopefully the chat. Hopefully you are still coming through. But I think you are.
All right, sweet.
Coming through audio wise. But yeah, finish the Loon Shoemaker.
Yeah,
Jump
the
off.
Luke Schoonmaker stuff, man. We have an opportunity to get some production against a team that we expect to run a lot of man coverage, and we expect to run a lot of single high in the Saints. So Luke Schoonmaker stepping in for Jake Ferguson at like 1-2% ownership maybe is highly intriguing to me. You still got me? Say something.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh,
You're still
sweet.
good. We got you. We're yeah. The I think the chat confirmed they can still hear you. So
All
if
right,
there was
sweet.
a time to lose you, your beautiful face. We can get through these last 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll throw it back to you, man. Let's hear your kind of moonshot of the week. You can't use Justin Fields. You can't use Mike Evans. Them's the
Yeah,
rules.
I did the wide receiver though. It's Amari Cooper. Looking at Amari Cooper, everything was still in place. He just got submarined by Deshaun Watson, and we're gonna have to live with this. But he had a lot of really good games last year with Deshaun Watson. A lot of big games. He still had 10 targets in that game. It's what we want. 46% of the Cleveland air yards. And we're getting this Jaguars team who in week 1 played the most man coverage on passing snaps in the NFL, allowed 200-yard wide receivers. We've know Amari Cooper in his history against man coverage with Deshaun Watson. He's been targeted on 32% of his routes. And the Jaguars are going to be missing Tyson Campbell, who's already been rolled out in this game.
Yeah,
So no one's going to get to Amari Cooper where he's priced, but I do want to mix him in MME stuff.
I like that shout. I like that shout a good bit. It's scary to be reliant on how Deshaun Watson looked in week 1, but oh man, he looked
I was
like he
trying to
was.
explain this to Ray Summerlin, who I do a show with on Sharp Football.
Yeah,
Trying to explain to someone that watched football and that like Sunday was the first time they saw Deshaun Watson play, and trying to explain to them that he was like really good and like led the NFL in passing one year. Like I was like, imagine
yeah,
trying to explain that to someone like this guy led the NFL in yards per pass attempt one season.
yeah. You're lying to me. Yeah, it's bad. And then all the off the field stuff, whatever. We're not going to anchor on that, but I like the Omari shout. I think one-off fashion is probably the best way to play that.
Oh yeah.
And as the rest is gross. As we end the show, I'm gonna try. I don't even know if I can manipulate StreamYard, so I'm gonna try and just like close my laptop and see if it ends that way. As always, we'll bring you these shows every Friday at noon Eastern. He is the great Rich Hribar of Sharp Football Analysis. I'm Hilow of One Week Season. Head on over to oneweekseason.com. Get signed up for Inner Circle, man. You'll get access to all of the inner workings of DFS theory that we cover on a weekly basis. Head on over to Sharp Football Analysis. Use code TAKE25 for 25% off anything on their site. And until next week, Rich, man, best of luck this weekend for another profitable week.
Look, your screen's back now.